I'm Julian Minnesone. It took me a little bit, but I'm open to love. Jeremiyah Love, that is.
Oh boy, I'm Kayla Anderson. It is mock draft season, and maybe my mock will surprise you, but maybe it won't with who I took number one overall.
And I'm Brad Hopkins. I actually shocked myself at how well I played the role of general manager in my mock draft. Let's get into it.
Tighten up. It's the Titan Squad. Everything Tennessee Titans every week. Covering all the big hits and game-changing plays from the heart of Music City, the way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. Squad up. The Titan Squad Show starts now.
And welcome to the Titan Squad Show. As you heard off the top right there, I'm Julian Minnesone alongside Kayla Anderson and Brad Hopkins. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. And now, my esteemed guests here with me, I put them through a little bit of an exercise, especially as we're getting ready for the new league year. Yes, Brad, that is you. You are esteemed, Brad, legend, I might add. With the new league year starting next week, obviously we're going to be busy with Titans signings and new faces to the team, who they want to bring in to help this roster in 2026. But until we get to that point, I wanted to do a little bit of a mock draft. We're still kind of fresh off that combine, wondering what the Titans are going to do, not just at 4, but with the rest of their picks. So we each went to PFSN and did a little mock draft, and we have them for you guys today. For our viewing audience, we're going to put up each of our picks on the screen. And for our audio listeners, we'll just read through each of our draft picks. And we're going to start with B-Hop on this one. So B-Hop, I'm going to pull up your draft right now. You just did this fresh today. And the first thing I notice is you're open to love, B-Hop.
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing is, we talked about this earlier. I don't think the Titans could actually go wrong with the number 4 pick, especially with the ones that they've been projected to take. I mean, you wouldn't have a bad draft if you took David Bailey number 4. He's certainly qualified as one of the more outstanding edge rushers in this draft. But when you start thinking about the generational talent aspect of it, the way that Titans offenses have been built traditionally from the ground up, meaning the running back position, Jeremiyah Love is one of those guys that might be synonymous with an Eddie George, a Chris Johnson, a Derrick Henry. The lineage of running backs is what I'm trying to say. Soft hands, tough runner, just unbelievable competitor. And what we saw at the combine kind of solidified his position as at least one of the top 3, regardless of position, picks in this draft. So if he were available at number 4, I think the Titans would actually steal it and start a new generation of Titans football.
The rest of your picks, we're going to go one by one here because each of the segments will have each of our drafts. So B-Hop will be first, Kayla will be in the second segment, and then I'll be at third. So you have Jeremiyah Love 4th overall. Then 35, you go wide receiver with Chris Bell out of Louisville.
Yeah, now the thing is, I did 3 of these drafts, and what a cool concept, by the way. We'll talk about the platform of which we actually did our draft, because being able to – I actually got so wrapped up into getting a player that I wanted, but the legitimacy is they might not be there because there are other players that are picking, other teams that are picking. So when you take that in consideration, a guy you might think might be there, it's now on to the next guy. And if it's not that position, if in other words, the next guy at the position isn't worthy of a pick that you think you're going to that you have him at, then you got to maybe go to a different position. So it was really cool to watch this whole thing. And Chris Bell came up second for me in 2 of my drafts. So I was thinking there must be something about this guy. You know what I mean? He runs that. he must be a really pristine route runner, because he's not going to get away from you with speed. Got a tremendous catch radius, and he's a tough dude. So I like him as an impact receiver at number 2, someone that can kind of help add some depth and challenge some of those 4th rounders from last year.
Your 3rd round pick at 66th overall, Drew Shelton out of Penn State. I guess I shouldn't be shocked you're going with a offensive lineman that high.
Got to get some linemen in there, man. And the thing is, I watched, Kayla, Julian, I watched some of the guys I would have loved to have had come to Tennessee. Not that I wouldn't want Drew Shelton to come, but I would have wanted a Caden Proctor. I would have wanted, a Spencer Finals, one of those guys, the higher up echelon, the Francis Manoas, those kind of guys. But Drew checks off a lot of boxes. Big Ten lineman, a guy that does well mirroring edge rushers, and I'm just reading his stats here. Run blocking may be a little inconsistent, but that's what the league is for, to get developed into that guy, right? But he checks off a lot of other boxes for the measurables. I'll help you out here. Malik Muhammad, another dude. I thought, okay, so Malik, when you look at it, he wasn't one of those guys that's going to be like, wow, you with the cover stuff, but he's going to sting you in the run game. Real physical cat. Where Devin Moore, the 141st pick, he's more of the guy that's going to be in your grill. He can neutralize your top option because he's able to athletically mirror that kind of guy. So I really liked him. Sure. And Jade Roberts, he's just a mauler. He's just a dude that you don't want to be messing around with in the bar, man. He's gonna throw you out the club, that kind of guy. That's his presence. And I think that when I looked at Cyrus Allen too at number 7, which I thought was kind of, when you start getting into 184 picks and whatever, start jockeying things around, right? So when I saw his smooth athletic ability, natural ball tracking, that kind of stuff, those kind of checked off a box for me late in the round. And I had to grab me a tight end too, Kayla.
Oh yeah.
Adding some depth to Gunnar Helm, Chigakonkwo,
yep.
David Martin Robinson is another guy on there, but they got to have some guys, and I figured the Alabama tight end would make sense. And me, I'm a lineman, right? So I got to stack the shells with some big bodies. Caden Bennett from Wyoming, an interior guy, I thought really made an impact for that program. So I thought too shabby grabbing a few linemen, a couple of receivers, a couple of corners. Starting the draft with running back, which I wouldn't have picked the running back if it weren't Jeremiyah Love. Let's just say that. And that's my draft.
Kayla, what are your thoughts on B-Hop's picks as we have them here? Let me just read them off one more time before you get into it, Kayla, with the audio audience here. We got Jeremiyah Love at 4th overall, Chris Bell, the Louisville receiver, at 35, Drew Shelton, Penn State tackle at 66. Then he goes back-to-back corners with Malik Muhammad and Devin Moore, Texas and Florida. Jaden Roberts, 143. Cyrus Allen, the receiver, Cincinnati, 184. Goes Josh Cuevas, tight end of Alabama, 194. And then rounding it out with another offensive lineman, the guard out of Wyoming, Caden Barnett. Kayla.
Yeah, no, I like it, B-Hop. First of all, let's start with Jeremiyah Love, who, obviously these earlier picks we know more about, and right now, at least in the process, and those are the value picks, right? Those are the guys that you were hoping that they get right in, they're plugged right in and can play right away. And Jeremiyah Love is definitely one of those guys. I think it was the last podcast that we did with each other where someone brought up the name Christian McCaffrey, and not saying that Jeremiyah Love is going to be Christian McCaffrey, but CMC, and watching here in particular this year with the 49ers, he was asked to do a lot in terms of more than just the run game and the pass game as well, which I know Jeremiyah Love has the ability to do that. Being able to have a versatile back like that, you can't go wrong with. And I know right now the Titans have their backs, but you're looking bigger picture, right? And this is a guy that has all the qualities that can be a weapon for Cam Ward, whether it's helping Cam relieve some things with the run game or find him as a pass catcher as well. So I can't fault you on that. I would not hate it if Love went to Tennessee, even though there are some more needs there. Obviously, back-to-back corners, I like it. I did that in my draft as well, Brad. And I think the reasoning for that is because I'm having cornerback fatigue. The Tennessee Titans have had so many issues with depth at cornerback, and they've tried to bring guys over. Clearly, that's not worked out, i.e. Snead. They just can't seem to find their footing back there, no pun intended. And I feel like this is a draft where maybe you can go and get a couple of these guys. And look, even if it's a depth piece, one of them ends up being a starter, the other's a depth piece. That's a win because they've been so depleted there. The one thing I'll ask you, B-Hop, is where is your edge player?
I was just going to say, B-Hop. I was just going to say the edge player, because all off season long, we've talked about Titans getting an edge. Did you have maybe in mind that they get an edge in free agency and then forego one in the draft?
Look at the smart guy, the big brain on you. I'm thinking at the end of the day, Amy's got all of this money, right? There's no way in the world she lets Trey Hendrickson and Max Crosby get away. Max might make it down to Dallas. I think that Jerry's been talking about that. Kind of can't even keep a secret, really. So if he actually ends up working a deal out with Las Vegas, you can definitely see him replacing Micah Parsons, which is just kind of weird in its own right. Like, why don't you just keep him? But if we could get a Trey Hendrickson, which I'm kind of thinking, man, Cincinnati sucks. Nashville would love to have him. You know what I mean? And I'm not talking about the team. I'm talking about the city. Who cares about Ohio, man? Come on down here. Couple up with Jeffrey Simmons. That's what we need. And I think that might be what the Titans are thinking as well.
I would love to see Jeffrey Simmons get some help, because seeing him get a career year with 11 sacks without any help was something to see. And now to get an experienced pass rusher next to him, man, with Robert Saleh too on defense, should be exciting to see. Okay, on the other side of the break, we're going to go to Kayla's mock draft. She teased it a little bit. Maybe have some similarities to Brad, but maybe some big differences as well. That's going to be next on the Titans Squad Show. Don't go anywhere. All right, we live in a world where we can stream anything, order food in minutes, and carry supercomputers in our pockets. And somehow buying tickets to a live game still feels complicated. Hidden fees, jumping prices, endless steps. There has to be a better way. That's why I use the Gametime app. It gives fans the advantage and makes getting tickets simple, whether it's NFL games, concerts, comedy, or whatever you're into. I jumped on the app to check out tickets for an upcoming game, and honestly, took me just minutes. You can see panoramic views from every seat before you buy, which is always good. 2 taps and you have great seats locked in. Fast, easy, done. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Gametime today. All right, we're going to go to Kayla's mock draft now. So if you're with us on YouTube Live, We'd love to have you here. Comment, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Maybe we'll get to some of your suggestions for our drafts and some feedback in the show. Kayla, I'll have you have the floor now.
Yeah. So, and clearly you can see I did some wheeling and dealing, if you know what I mean. I'm always about, like Borgonzi, I feel like likes to say, like, you want as many guys as you can, right? And you want to look forward to the future too. So you can see I've done some wheeling and dealing. I even picked up a 2027 Las Vegas 3rd round pick. So I'm not only looking at this year, I'm looking at the future as well. I think I got some pretty good value in here. So I'll start with my number 4 overall pick. If you watched the podcast last week, no surprise here that I am going with my guy, David Bailey, the edge out of Texas Tech. I'm just one of those people that once I get stuck on someone, he kind of becomes my guy. And then I try to put it out there in the world and have it come back. Now, whether that's going to happen or not for the Titans this season, I don't know. But I do feel like David Bailey is a guy that you could instantly plug in and you're going to see something out of him. You're going to get production out of him. And why is that? Well, the guy spent 3 years at Stanford. So first of all, he has the brains, which I know I've mentioned this before. Mike Borgonzi seems to have a theme when he drafts players. And a lot of the players he drafts are very smart football players. So yes, what they do on the field athletically matters, but also how they're preparing every day for a game or every week for a game. And just how they go about their business and how they carry themselves, I think is important for what Mike Borgonzi is looking for in a culture as well. So this is a guy who went to Stanford before he went to Tech, where he just pretty much like solidified what he was as an edge. He had 14.5 sacks this season at Tech. And I just think like just this guy coming off the edge with the pass, like the moves that he has, like we talked about this last week, and Brad, I think it was you that brought it up in terms of some of the moves that he already has in his arsenal. And I feel like he can probably add some of that too. But I think this is a guy that just straight up fits what coach is looking for in terms of an aggressive player, the length and the speed coming off the edge. It's naturally a fit for me for Saleh and this defense specifically. And again, you've been wanting this production from the Titans for so long at that edge position, because it's one thing to have a quarterback, but you also have to have the guy that disrupts the quarterback. And I think that you'd be getting that in David Bailey.
Yeah.
You went receiver for your next pick, but it looks like you made a trade right there.
Yeah, that was a trade that I believe, and I can't remember exactly every trade and who it was with, but I do believe that was with Cincinnati. And honestly, they had just switched about 2 positions for this. So I did not go down much in order to go to 41 and get Denzel Boston, the wide receiver out of the school I don't prefer to mention much, but that is the school of Washington. I'm a Washington State girl, so it's always hard for me to pick those Washington players. But what I'll say about this is we clearly are in the, I guess, era of we've got to find these wide receivers that you can allow to grow with your future quarterback in Cam Ward. Like you want these young receivers to grow with Cam. And we saw it last year with Jim Dike and Alec Iomanner, and we've seen some progress, especially towards the end of the year. But I think adding a bigger body like Denzel Boston, he's 6'4", 212, I think is a value pick at that spot. He is perfect when it comes to that big X boundary wide receiver type of player. I think Tennessee needs a guy like that. He gives him a little bit of a different skill set, like I said, than the 2 other younger wide receivers at that position. And just because of his body, I mentioned his weight. He has a really natural wide catch radius. He's good in contested situations. I think those are all the things that you would like in a wide receiver in terms of them coming to Tennessee and being another weapon for the young Cam Ward.
Then you go with cornerback back-to-back, similar to what Brad did, but you go Will Lee, Texas A&M, and then Hezekiah Massis from Cal at 67 and 101.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Similar in size are these 2 corners, and it's interesting nowadays. Like corners can vary from as small as like 5'8", and they can be up to 6'3", whatever. But these guys are kind of right in the middle at that 6'1" position. I'll start with Will Lee. This is a guy 6'1", 189. You had mentioned out of Texas A&M. I think his man coverage is what is like sticks out to me. He has the tools and techniques to be a complete shutdown corner. And I think that that's what the Titans have been looking for, wanted to have in a guy like L'Jarius Sneed. Doesn't seem to have worked out there. He's long, athletic. I love that he can mirror the receiver's movements. I think that's a big bonus in a guy like this. He has good eyes in terms of tracking down the ball. So I like this guy a lot. And the reason why I went with another corner again in Massis at 101 was because I just feel like, again, if you have a guy that has some value there, at least he can be a guy who can be a depth player and grow in your system. He had a lot of production at Cal last year. I think he was like one of the most productive corners in the country, to be fair. He has scheme versatility, again, played a lot of football. I like, he's a smooth backpedaler, comfortable in vertical planes when it comes to carrying, following receivers. So I think this is a guy as well. It's a little bit different, but in terms of body, 6'1", 180, about the same size. I just am trying to add depth at that position because I just think it's got to happen at some point. We've ignored that position for like 2 years. It's about time that we find some guys in the draft.
And then you go tight end here, a big need also for the Titans, especially if they're not going to bring back, like in Chicago, for example, Eli Raridan from Notre Dame.
Yeah, I really like Eli. I watched him at the Combine, and I heard a few interviews with Eli too. First of all, he's a pedigree player in terms of his dad played offensive line at Notre Dame. He's kind of just has that natural ability in terms of the athleticism. He is 6'6", 245 pounds, but he is a freaking athlete, man. I mean, he has good sneaky speed, guys, and really good ball skills. But the greatest part about it is he's a willing blocker. And honestly, that's what he gets praised for a lot as well. And we all know in this offense, and especially with this line still kind of like getting fully complete, like to have a willing blocker and a body like that, in terms of Eli Raridan, I think that is a bonus right there to have a guy like that you can add at tight end. And it can also be somebody you can utilize in terms of pass catching.
And then on the back end, your final 3 picks include the linebacker of Pittsburgh, Kyle Lewis, or Reed Adams. You got some offensive line help from Texas Tech, and then you round it out with some safety help with Deshaun Singleton from Nebraska.
Yeah, I feel like at this point of the draft, you're trying to get as much value as you can, but you don't know exactly what these players are going to be. Let's be honest, right? Some of them can end up making a name for themselves. Others are just going to battle to make the team. But I do feel like Kyle Lewis out of Pitt. First of all, I love Pitt in terms of the players that they produce defensively. That team in college, at the college level, is known for really putting out some really good defensive players, especially linebackers. And I think Kyle Lewis, he's a little undersized. He's 6 feet, 220 pounds, but his grades, especially at the combine, he graded really well. And his athleticism score, I know he had an 86 in the 2026 combine in terms of linebackers. That ranked second amongst all linebackers. I feel like this is a guy that you could have in terms of depth there, because we're talking about Cedric Gray and him taking the next, step. You have a couple guys there right now, but why not add a guy where you could have him again grow in this Robert Saleh defense and at least see what you can get out of him. And then, I went with the offensive guard out of Texas A&M. I don't know as much about him, but again, I think interior offensive line, they could add some depth there. You could see if he could develop within the system. I always love guys that played in the SEC. We know what's asked of them game in and game out. And so I feel like they're a little bit more prepared sometimes. And then the safety out of Nebraska, Singleton, look, the safety position's a concern as well, guys. And I know we've got Amani Hooker and stuff, but where is the depth there? There's not a ton of depth. So if you can bring in another young guy and try to develop them, I think that's what I was looking for in terms of that 194th pick there.
B-Hop, real quick before we go to break, what are your thoughts on Kayla's draft? Because we have some comments already that Zantku says, I can get behind both of these mock drafts so far. So they're liking what you both have brought to the table.
I had Hezekiah Masters on my second draft. I also had Denzel Boston on my second draft too. So, obviously you couldn't go wrong at number 4. David Bailey would be a tremendous pick for the Titans. The only difference for you and I either was just which era are we ushering in right now? Are we the dominant defense that we know it takes to win a championship, or are we going to start controlling the ground like this franchise has done for decades previous? So, 6 of one, half dozen of another. Pick your poison. I think they're both great guys.
I think no matter how you slice it up, you're going to get a good player if you decide to stay at number 4 overall. Yeah. I think that's what we're going to see.
Sure.
And
are you trying to be different there, Julie? When you say if you decide to stay at number 4,
believe me, I really wanted to trade in the simulator that we used. I got some offers for example, the Chiefs. Now that they've stockpiled some draft picks, but I decided to stay put. That's all I'm going to say for at least my draft, and we're going to talk about that on the other side of the break here. Don't go anywhere.
Let's do it.
All right, it's tax time, but for a lot of us, the old way of doing taxes is a lot. Trying to book an appointment, that's not the most convenient. Sitting in a waiting room with a stack of papers, emailing back and forth, and wondering if they really get your situation. But this year, you're getting a major upgrade. Intuit TurboTax now has in-person locations nationwide. You can meet face-to-face with a real tax expert, and your documents get uploaded straight to your TurboTax app on the spot. And just like that, you're done. Your TurboTax expert works to get you every dollar you deserve, and while you get real-time notifications as you go about your day. It's the relief of walking in and meeting a real person and walking out knowing your taxes are being handled right. Head to turbotax.com/local to find a store near you and book your appointment. All right, guys. I guess that leaves up to my mock draft now. I, similar to B-Hop, was all about David Bailey, and I still love David Bailey, right? We were banging the drum for David Bailey all these weeks after the season ended, and we got to see which edges were going to be near the top of the draft. But as you can see, I agree with B-Hop. And it took me a minute, B-Hop, but I got off of the edge talk, and I just the more I think about Jeremiyah Love, and we were talking about this off camera yesterday, B-Hop and I, this franchise has had a lot of success with their running back position.
Mm-hmm.
You think of Eddie George, you think of Chris Johnson, you think of Derrick Henry. And what better way to usher in the next era of Titans football than with Jeremiyah Love? And you think also of, and I know this comparison is going to get made, right? And they still got to prove it out in the field if Jeremiyah Love gets drafted.
Mm-hmm.
But Ward and Love, McNair and George, I mean, it's just eerily similar. And they were taking him back-to-back drafts too. You know, McNair coming from a smaller school, Cam Ward coming from Incarnate Word, Eddie George, Heisman, Jeremiyah Love was in the Heisman finalists. Yeah. I mean, it's just writes itself.
Look at
you. I don't know if you have any other thoughts on that, B-Hop, because you lived it, but like, it just seems almost too perfect to like write a script for a Hollywood ending there.
Listen, I'm in my mid-50s. I've been around long enough to realize the I guess the repetitiveness of life, right? Mm-hmm. And so when I look at the stadium that's being built, set to open in 2027, it reminds me of when we moved here from Houston and our stadium hadn't been built yet. We were competitive enough to give people a reason to kind of take a flyer on us, but they weren't really convinced until we opened the doors to that brand spanking new stadium. And those players that we drafted that had invested in, Eddie George and Steve McNair, were then just a little older, just a little wiser, which is the exact same situation that could potentially happen with Cam Ward and Jeremiyah Love if they decide to go that way. Because in successive years, they drafted this foundation, this franchise's foundation for the next how many every year Steve and Eddie played here. And I think that they're set to do it again. We know the potential of Cam Ward. And there's a quiet buzz about what Brian Daboll is going to be able to transform him into. But let alone throw him someone behind him that will be as equal a threat, that makes defensive coordinators shudder at the fact that this might be the next dude that we're talking about. Mm-hmm. And we got him. So I think there's a lot of potential there to establish, the same kind of history that used to once exist on the Cumberland.
Can I ask one question? Can I jump in here real quick?
Sure,
you know me, the journalist here, always trying to ask a question. So when it comes to Robert Saleh and him being now the head coach, do you think there is anything that you can make of like, hey, he wants to establish his defense coming in here and have his guy kind of to say, hey, this was my first draft and I'm a part of this. I know that Mike Borgonzi is ultimately the one that makes the decision, but do you feel like that at all can come into play when deciding between like a running back on in the offensive side and then, a defensive game changer like a David Bailey?
Well, to me, the fact that he would bring in two personalities that have head coaching capability shows his ability to share the spotlight. It doesn't have to necessarily be about him. It doesn't necessarily have to be about a player that could be an impact player for the style of defense that he's going to employ, because at the end of the day, he's going to teach the process, which will then sprinkle over everybody. And I think knowing what you have helps that job be easier, right? But at the end of the day, I think that he's looking at the potential of a Jeremiyah Love having a huge impact on the most problematic part of this team last year, which was them consistency offensively, right? So you'd hope that our youngsters improve one year to the next. We've got a lot of draft equity that showed up last year, especially in the middle rounds, to be starters on this team. And I think that they're willing and ready to take that next step. So I don't think that Robert Saleh would sit around and say, you know what? I'm going to establish my side of the football first. Not saying that you were asking it in that form or fashion, but I think they're going to be nasty regardless. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Because the best player on this team is on the defensive side of the football. They just hope they have the offense have some complementing players, on their side so they can be equally as competitive.
And to that point, as much as I would love to fill the need of edge, I mean, Jeremiyah Love, when you think of best players available, and the Titans do just need stars, like they just need more good players, he's the first person that come to mind. And when you think of the edges, there's questions about all three of them. There's no questions to me about Jeremiyah Love. And that is why I decided to change my mind and go with him at number 4.
Good point.
Now, I made this draft without free agency in mind. So keep that in mind, right? So that is why I went edge at 35 with Zion Young. I think he's some of the better value picks you're going to get for an edge if you're passing up on one in the first round. 6.5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles at Missouri last year. He's kind of a hand in the dirt guy, so he's a little bit different from Jermaine Johnson, who you just got in a trade for Tavondre Sweat from the Jets. So that's why I go with him at 35. And then I go to 66. As you see, I didn't make any trades either. I go to 66 and go with Julian Neal out of Arkansas. I think for the round and what kind of cornerback you can get there, I think Julian Neal fits it. He's 6'2", 200 plus pounds, elite physical traits. He's good at disrupting receivers, solid ball skill, and he played in the SEC. And I do give, at least being an SEC country, give those guys a little bit longer leeway to where I'm like, okay, I think I'm going to take somebody like that. And so you fill your immediate needs. You get the star, the edge, and the cornerback, which I think are like the 3 biggest needs right now for the Titans. 101, this was the only pick where I felt a little bit iffy on because I knew I had to go receiver. I went Malachi Fields, 6'4" from Notre Dame. The only problem is he doesn't have the top end speed that you would maybe want in somebody who's 6'4". And we already have an Alec Eilmanor who is 6'2", not as big, but he's a combat catch guy. You have Chimdike, who is the speedster, but he's not as big. But I just look at, when you think of trying to find a top receiver, you think of 6 foot 6'1" and above, right? With speed. And somebody 6'4", Titans don't have somebody, at least as a receiver, like that right now. So that's why I went with Malachi Fields at 101. And then B-Hop, as you see, with 141 and 143, I went back-to-back offensive linemen. Jake Slaughter, one of the better centers in the entire country. And if Florida wasn't that great, but that run game was one of the more redeeming qualities of that Florida team. And then Inez Cooper, a guard from Miami who spent multiple years at Miami, which means he played with Cam Ward.
Yeah.
So
I like it.
That's where I go 141, 143. Sam Roush, I went at 184, the tight end out of Stanford, one of the better blocking tight ends. And obviously that was a frustration with Chigakonkwo last year, as though he was great in the receiving game. As a tight end, left a lot to be desired from a blocking perspective. And I think if you're going to have a Jeremiyah Love, you need to block up front for that dude. So that's why I went with Sam Roush. And then if you notice 194 linebacker Lander Barton, he is the brother of Cody Barton.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Spoke with him a little bit at the combine. Now he's a lot different than Cody. Cody is a little bit more compact and bigger. Cody's 6'2"-ish. And Lander's 6'5". 240 pounds. So he's got a little bit of length on Cody, a little bit of a different player, but football's in their blood. It's been a part of that family. And maybe he'll be a little bit more comfortable as a depth piece, with Cody there. And then I go cornerback again, because I think, like you mentioned, Kayla, this team just needs some help in the secondary. And think of the corners they have right now. Like it's Marcus Harris and that's it. And so they need some depth pieces in the secondary there. So there's my draft.
Very nice.
Yeah, I like it. I mean, I took a flyer on Malachi Fields. I also took a look at Lander Barton too. So I was curious when I read that they were related. I thought, oh, okay, that's pretty cool to have 2 Bartons on the Titans. But the crazy part about that whole the simulating of the draft was how real it was, in that I might have a player in mind to pick up, right? And I'm looking at him because I got the position up and I got by ranking who is next in line to be taken, right? And then bam, I watched that guy go off the board, and it was starting to tick me off. So I wonder how emotional these guys are when you think you have somebody in mind, you've done your homework, you looked at the measurables, you like what you see, and you're just sitting there waiting. The next thing you know, he's off the board, and all that work you just did is gone. You know what I mean? So he's off the board. Now you got to try and find somebody else. So the thing is, real quick, it's matching up. Like I've got pick number 66, right? I'm not going to take like the 8th lineman available because I need a lineman if 7 of the first ones are gone. So now I got to move on to somebody else that's worthy of a 66 pick. Maybe that's the 3rd best receiver. You see what I'm saying? Now you got to play these games. So it kind of does become best available while you're thinking about servicing a need, if that makes sense.
It does. That's why I was having this conversation on my radio show the other day about, like, if you wanted to be in one room in a professional sports at some time, where would you want to be? And mine was obviously the war room on draft day. And just for the fact that that is what they're going through in real time. And they spend months putting their big boards together and trying to be, ready for any situation where the guy does go, and like you said, and they're then, okay, what's our next option? But to be in there and to experience that, and probably the adrenaline rush that goes on in that moment, or even to see when John Robinson trades away a guy like AJ Brown and Mike Vrabel is like, what the heck just happened? Like, those are the moments that have to be so incredible if you're actually in that room doing that.
Indeed. Yeah. And that was the big part of this. You imagine having to make the $1 million decision too, when we were just sweating over it on a fun little draft simulator. It must be pretty intense in those war rooms, that's for sure. On the other side of the break, we're going to answer some questions and some comments about some of the mock drafts that we put together. We're going to do that next here on the Titan Squad Show. Don't go anywhere. All right, guys. So we have one question. This comes from PattyBoy27. Who's the number one free agent you want for the Titans?
Kayla, go first.
Yeah. So I guess, in my imaginary world, so then maybe I could take Love too. That's my dog, by the way, Red. In my imaginary world, I would probably love to have a guy like Max Crosby. I mean, come on. Like, he's the hottest guy out there in terms of free agency. But I'll be a little bit more realistic. I think Linderbaum is probably the guy that you're looking at right now.
Yeah.
You don't have a center that at least you feel comfortable can come in right this moment and pick up from where he left off at his last spot and be a solid guy for a younger quarterback. So I think Tyler Linderbaum is going to have to be my guy right now that I would go after in free agency. But again, that comes with a little bit of price.
Yeah, he'll be expensive. B-Hop, who do you like?
You can cover up for a center. You don't have to have an all-pro. It was a luxury. It would be. But I think Corey Levin is okay. You draft a young guy that can compete with him, maybe in that third round or something like that if you want to invest that high. Not poo-pooing the idea. But I think what you're on to with Max Crosby would be ideal. I don't think it's going to happen just because I think Jerry's got his sights on him.
Yeah.
But I think addressing the outside with a veteran, it has to be that way. Do you know why? We got a 2-year window, fellas. We got a 2-year window to get to the show. And the reason why I say that is because next year you're going to see an improvement for this Titans roster. It's just going to be way too much attention put on us with the money we're going to spend in free agency and with the new acquisition of coaches that have already got names that are going to draw national attention. So there's going to be improvement. By the time that stadium opens, this thing's going to be at full speed, right? And then it gets blown up because the success of this team is going to bring about other potential suitors that are going to want to pick this team apart for its success. Brian Daboll will be a head coach someplace else. Mark my words. The better that the Titans do, the more likely Brian Daboll will be a head coach someplace else because they'll start to look at his impression in this offense and be like, dang, the guy's ready to do it again. I'm not going to say Gus Bradley has another opportunity anytime soon, but there will be a huge difference in who's going to be calling plays for Cam Ward after 2 years. So you better get it while the getting's good. And while Jeffrey Simmons is still playing at a high level as well. So stop screwing around if you're going to plant a seed, get David Bailey, get Arvell Reese, get somebody that's going to make an immediate impact as soon as they get on the football field. But if you can address that by getting the veteran up front first before you even get to the draft, that's what you need to do.
So you don't have a problem, B-Hop, with kind of bringing in, and look, Max is not 30 yet. He's 28 years old, but he's going to hit 30 before one of these guys that you draft does. You're cool though with bringing in a guy like that. Like you said, it's more winning like right now than building potentially for that guy being here for a while.
Yeah. I played with the likes of Sean Jones, William Fuller, Wilbur Marshall, all older veterans. I think they were probably 8-9 years older than me when I first came into the league. So I'm used to a veteran on the outside teaching me. You know what I'm saying? Think about this. Don't only think about also the numbers that one of these veterans could put up, but think about them working with your young tackles. That's what they used to do for me. They'd be like, Brad, you are bending over at the waist, bro. Stop sticking your hands out so soon, because that's what I want you to do, so that I can do something with your hands. You're not going to be able to reach me. I'm going to knock them down, and I'm going to do something to you. They would work with me. These veterans on the other side of the football, these are the same intangibles that can help our young tackles. When you've got a guy that's willing to share the trade secrets and make them better.
Indeed. Yeah. Well, and who better to listen to than Brad Hopkins when it comes to that kind of stuff too, as well. So I thinking with Titan maximum 239, the CB area is devoid of talent. And that's where I would go in free agency. Alontae Taylor is somebody that comes to mind. I was there when the Titans played the Saints this past year. Dude was everywhere. 11 pass deflections, a couple of interceptions, and they need a cornerback one. Like the L'Jarius Sneed thing was obviously a failure. And even if you draft early for a cornerback, you're expecting to get some starters, but they're not going to be a CB1 right away. And so whether it is an Alontae Taylor, whether it is a Jalen Watson, your guy from Washington State, like one of those two guys, something like that, I think would be certainly helpful, because you want that defense to have as many good players as possible, because Robert Saleh is just going to make them ascend to the next level to me. So that's where I would go.
I like that. I like
just to be a little bit different, because I do also agree that we need a center, a veteran center too. I think a veteran center, to have some sort of continuity with Cam Ward, let him have the same guy for a couple years, back-to-back years, and let's see what he can do, especially if they do draft a Jeremiyah Love. Okay, that'll wrap us up for the show today. Do you have anything else? Actually, B-Hop, you were going to say anything?
Oh, no. I was just going to say, a Linderbaum acquisition would remind me of when we got Mark Stepnoski from the Cowboys. An established interior offensive lineman that was already had a lot of accolades behind his name, and he really kind of fortified the interior. So I said all that, you can cover them up. You can, but it'd be also nice to have some dudes that were just some studs up front that people recognize could kick your butt.
I think I got so spoiled, Brad. Obviously, I didn't cover you, but on the line, but I got so spoiled having Ben Jones here to cover. And he was just such a solid player and a leader on that line, and kind of brought everybody together. So I guess I'm still longing for that person to come back to the Titans, or to develop into that type of solid center.
When in doubt, go trenches. That is the advice from the one and only Brad Hopkins. All right, we want to thank you for joining us on the Titan Squad show. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, all of that fun stuff. Tune into the Locked On Titans podcast with Tyler Rowland every single day, and us twice a week here live on YouTube, Tuesdays and Fridays during the off season. But for now, I'm Julian Minnesota. That's Kayla Anderson, Brad Hopkins. We'll see you guys next time.